This lesson lays a foundation for linear logic. I'll run through some ways of describing position and also some example challenges to show you key things to keep in mind when solving this style of question. The challenges in the Inquisitive Minds Linear Logic series are split into 5 collections. The questions in Level 1 are great for people who are just beginning their logical reasoning journey. This lesson will focus on this beginning stage. Here we have a horizontal line of 3 coloured squares. By the way, horizontal line just means a line going across. If you have trouble remembering this word, think about the horizon, which is the line where it looks like the ocean meets the sky. If I drew a line on the horizon, it would be called a horizontal line. Okay, so back to our 3 squares in a horizontal line. Let's look at some ways of describing the position of the squares. The red square is touching the blue square. The green square is not touching the red square. The red and green squares are not next to each other. There is a red square on the left end of the line. If you're one of the many people who get confused between your left and your right, here's a trick for you. Put your hands in front of you like this. The hand where your fingers make an L, which is facing the same direction as a capital L, is the left one. So that's why we can say that the colour on the left end of the line is red. We can also say that the middle square is blue. Let's look at that description for a minute. The middle square on a horizontal line is the square which has the same number of squares on its left as on its right. The easiest way to find the middle is to count the squares from the outside. So here, blue is in the middle square because there is 1 square on each side of it. Here, blue is the middle square because there are 2 squares on each side of it. Here, there is not 1 middle square because the middle of the line is between 2 squares. Instead, we say that the middle 2 squares are red and blue. Back to our descriptions. The red square is to the left of the green square, but not touching it. There are 2 colours mentioned in this sentence, red and green. Sometimes people get confused about which of the 2 colours mentioned has to be on the left side. I find an easy thing to look for is the colour that is mentioned after the word of. This is the colour you start at, and then you move to the left to get to the other colour. So that is why we say that red is to the left of green. The green square has 2 squares on its left. That's because if we start at the green and move to the left, we go past 1 square and a second square. The green square is to the right of the red square. Let's look for the colour after the of. So if we start at red and move right, we will go past the green square. In this next part of our lesson, I have some sentences which are describing a new line of squares, but the colours are missing from the sentences. I want you to think about what colour you would write in each gap. Here is our horizontal line. Let's have a look at the sentences. The red square is touching the something square. Well, the red square is touching the yellow square. The red square is not touching which square? The red square is not touching the purple square. The something and something squares are not next to each other. Well, the 2 squares that aren't next to each other are the purple and the red. There is a something square on the left end of the line. Remember to look for the left. So the colour that's on the left end of the line is purple. The middle square is what? Well, if we go from the end of the line and count in, we can see that the middle square is yellow. The something square is to the left of the something square, but not touching it. Let's have a look first at what 2 colours aren't touching. Can you see that it's the purple and the red that aren't touching? So we know that 1 space has to have the word purple in it, and 1 has to have the word red. Let's now figure out which one's which. If we look at the word of, we have to figure out what goes after the of. Remember, this colour is where we start and then we move left and go past the other colour. So if we started at the purple and moved left, we would not go past the red square. So the word purple does not go after the of. However, if we started at the red square and moved left, we would go past the purple square. So that means that we put the word red after the of. Then of course, the word in the other space is purple. The something square has 2 squares on its left. So we're looking for the colour that if we start there, we'll go past 2 squares when we move towards the left. If we started at purple, there's nothing to the left. If we started at yellow, there's only 1 square to the left. Whereas if we started at red, there are 2 squares to the left. So we can say that the red square has 2 squares on its left. The something and something squares are to the right of the purple square. So if we start at the purple and move towards the right, we would go past the yellow and the red squares. So they're the colours we write in our spaces. Now we're going to run through 2 logical reasoning questions. Let's do an easier one first. Before we start though, there's one thing to remember. A lot of people make a mistake of guessing when they're solving a logical reasoning question. Our suggestion though is never ever guess. Only place a colour in a line when you are absolutely sure that you are placing it in the correct position. Let's look at a question. Place a red, yellow and blue square in a horizontal line so that. Now before we go any further, I'm going to place 3 spaces in a horizontal line so that we actually have our places marked out for us. I'm also going to get a red, yellow and blue square so that we know what we're working with. Now let's look at the rest of the hints. The blue square is on the left end of the line and the yellow square is touching the blue square. If the blue square is on the left end of the line, remembering which way is left, we can just place the blue on the line there. The yellow square is touching the blue square, so therefore we can put the yellow square so that it's touching the blue, which means our red goes in the last position. So that's the answer to our question. Let's look at a harder question now. Remember, no guessing. Now the thing that's harder about this question is that the hints are placed out of order, and that's something to remember when you're solving these questions. Sometimes you have to look past a hint and come back to it later. Place a red, yellow and blue square in a horizontal line so that. So before we go any further, again, we'll place our 3 squares to mark out our 3 spaces, and we'll actually pick our red, yellow and blue squares ready to go. The first hint says that the middle square is not red. Now the problem here is that there are 2 colours that are not red, so we're not really sure whether the yellow or the blue goes in the middle. Because we can't do anything with that hint yet, we go past it and we'll come back to it later. The other hint is that the yellow square is on the right end of the line. Now we can do something with that hint. If you think about which end is the right end, and then put the yellow on that end of the line. Now we can go back to our first hint. The middle square is not red. Well, we've only got 2 colours we haven't used now, red and blue. So if the middle square is not red, then the middle square must be blue. Remember that the middle square is the one that has 1 space on each side of it, so we're going to put the blue there. Now of course the red goes in the other space. That brings us to the end of what you'll need to know to complete the Level 1 logical reasoning questions. If you'd like to learn more, look out for our other logical reasoning videos. If you'd like to purchase any of our logical reasoning challenges to try them out for yourself, go to the Inquisitive Minds website.